All right, guys, I'm on with my buddy Eric.
What's up, Trav?
What's good, dude? I teased this like maybe 3 weeks ago when were you down with your parents?
Yeah, it was about 3 weeks ago, maybe a
Okay.
month. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, yo, I got to get Eric on the channel and introduce him. Eric has a fabulous channel, which I'm gonna link to. It'd be like the top link. I'm gonna pin the top comment. You guys need to go there and check it out. I actually have in my saved for tomorrow's like work day, the interview you did with Ross's mom.
Oh yeah, Lynn Ulbricht. I had tears in my eyes recording that one. I mean,
I'm looking forward to that one. Ross was a guy I didn't know him personally, but I remember Snowmageddon, and I met him there, I believe, in DC.
Oh,
at Snowmageddon for SFL.
Was he at that conference?
Yeah. Because it was that one or the one right after that one, but I remember having a little bit of a conversation with him because he was an interesting kid. You know, like he was vibrating at a different level, like for sure. You know, like he just grasped the concepts of. I mean, the kid was like a sponge.
Yeah,
he just grabbed information.
A brilliant kid. I don't think I talked about this with Lynn, but I'd met him at Penn State because he was a graduate student at Penn State when I was a freshman there. And I didn't know who he was at the time, obviously, but I remember kind of looking back. Oh, I met that kid because he was part of the Ron Paul club. And that was right when Ron Paul was first running for president. And so I was trying to look through my old pictures, see if I might have even had a
has some photos of the Ross. Yeah. So let me spin it in for the audience. So Ross Ulbricht is the, I guess, founder, maybe co-founder, but I think we could say founder, and mastermind behind Silk Road, which was essentially the first test case for Bitcoin, where it was a free open marketplace. They sold all sorts of things. Obviously, they're most famous for the drug part of the website. Essentially, it was like an eBay that used Bitcoin. And the FBI did a 2 or 3 year sting op on him, probably 2 years. I think it was a little less than 2 years. They did a sting op where they had put, so they had like embedded some people into the network. And some people did some really messed up things, including a murder for hire, 2 FBI agents, or I believe they're FBI's. You know the story better. And essentially, like, when it all came all at the end in the court hearing, essentially Ross wasn't willing to back off his principles with the judge, and it just really pissed the judge off, and she threw the book at him. I think he could have gotten, like, correct me if I'm wrong, he could have maybe 3 to 7 years, and she threw him like for 220.
Well, you're right. There's so many crazy stories about what was going on at the trial. I mean, so you brought the murder for hire issue. So that was actually in the book that came out about this whole thing. There was this whole theory, and then the FBI agents had this whole theory about how there was a murder for hire instituted by Ross against one of the Silk Road employees who had kind of turned on him.
Yeah, and that wasn't Ross at all. Yeah.
Well, it was never charged at court. They never provided any kind of formal evidence of it. It was in the book, and it was kind of reported on. It was this theory put out by the FBI that, again, was never proven in court. They didn't even have enough evidence to bring it to court. But that's kind of the one story everyone remembers from this. It was something that he was never even charged with, but people think about this murder for hire issue.
Right.
But I mean, there was a whole bunch of weird stuff that was going on.
That's why I brought it up. And so anyway, I mean, because it's interesting, because I think I ran into him right about the same time I met you, like that same weekend, essentially, or, the week, right after that, like immediately right after that. So my story meeting Eric is I show up to DC. I'm on like a student's trip. I don't even
remember. I don't remember how we met. So
I remember this very well.
Okay. I'm scared. Now I'm scared.
Okay.
Let me preface this by saying we were very young. I think I was like 21, 22 at this point. So
younger. You're 22 or 21 at this point. Okay. Because I'm like a junior in college.
Young and dumb.
You're like a senior. You're doing all your intern stuff.
Okay.
Like 2010. Snowmageddon hits the city, and we did a conference at American University, which was like an incredible campus to be at when it's like all snowed out and everything like that. Whole city was basically shut down.
Now keep it. Now you're from Florida, so this was a Snowmageddon to you. I'm from Pennsylvania.
I was born in Mass. I was born in Massachusetts.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd been in Florida for like a decade at that point.
Right. So it was about like 3 or 4 inches of snow, but the whole city of DC was shut down.
That's what they called it, though.
Right. They did.
They called it Snowmageddon.
And those of us from the north kind of laughed, but yeah, go ahead.
So anyway, like, go down in the metro, the train doors open, Eric is sitting there in his suit, right? And he's just like, he kind of looks at me and he's like, are you going to the conference, the SFL conference? And I'm like, I am. And he's like, me too, man. We can find this place together. And like, we get off at the metro station or whatever transit we were riding, and we like try to figure out, maneuver like this corner to that corner, basically find American University's like campus, because it was kind of like in the city area where like they own this land over here, and this is owned by like some public, this is like some apartment buildings, and then they own like this parcel. If you guys have been to a university like in a city area, that's kind of, the university is typically spread out amongst the little area of that city, not necessarily all just like one blocked off thing. Right. And so we were trying to find their like conference hall, essentially. And yeah, man, we hung out that conference. I think we sat at the same table. We ran into the Peppertine girls at that time. Yeah. I knew immediately. I was like, yo, that's a no-fly zone right there. And Eric was just like, and I was impressed. I have to say, it was like a year or two later, but I was like, when it ended, I was like, yeah, I kind of knew how that was going to go.
You did not want to get into this.
Yeah, no, we won't go down that road. Except I will say, one of these chicks tried to start a coup to take over SFL. That was like their first clue. Like they literally tried to start a coup to like oust the founder of Students for Liberty on a trip.
So all of that, I have a funny story actually. So all of that went down on a trip to Vegas. They were doing they were going to a conference in Vegas. Now I was just kind of a fellow traveler. I wasn't involved in any of the leadership with SFL. But
you went to the Vegas trip?
I went to the Vegas trip because one of the people who actually was in the leadership, who was supposed to go, ended up not being able to go like last second. And so just because I was friends with some of the other guys, they're like, hey, Eric, we got an extra ticket to Vegas and extra ticket to fly to Vegas and a hotel room.
Yeah, dude. Because I was living with Clark at the time. He was my roommate. And Clark's like, hey, man, we're going to Vegas this weekend. You want to go? And I'm like, with who? And he's like SFL. I'm like, no. It's gonna be a shit show.
I took the completely opposite approach. I was like, yeah, free trip to Vegas, of course.
Yeah.
So all of this drama was going on I still don't. I don't know the details of it, but I just know that all this drama was going on. I was having a blast in Vegas. I was going to shows, I was drinking, and meanwhile they're all like holed up in their hotel room on a Friday night in Vegas. And so I was like, I remember like at the end of the trip, because I really hadn't seen anyone else. I was kind of just off doing my own thing. At the end of the trip, we're getting ready to go on the flight. I was like, man, what did you guys think? I said, this was an awesome weekend. And they're like, no, it sucked. And I was like, oh, okay. You guys had a different experience than I did, because they were miserable.
Oh, dude, because like what happened was like, essentially the organization was run by students. It started to get funding. It started to grow. It started to have a really cool network. The network was a bunch of libertarians from all over. Clark, my roommate, was organizing all of these student groups on these campuses. So the logistics that these kids were pulling off was pretty incredible. And they were like getting books in the hand. I mean, you've got some on your shelf back there, but they were like orchestrating like funding to get books, to put these ideas into schools, to like not necessarily fight demand, but like just to be like, hey, liberty, that's cool. That's a concept. Like and this is like in 2009 when this is kind of happening, right? This is the beginning of like the Obama era. Things were starting to change pretty big. I mean, Bush had really stripped away a lot of liberties, but there was just like this thing happening. Well, right at this point, like before the Vegas thing, they had a few years. They were really established, they were established entity. And anyway, like these chicks basically try to organize a coup to like oust the founder, which just looks terrible with donors and stuff. But being that we were the only student group around and we were like all young, I mean, this is all internal fighting that was happening. No one really knew about it on the outside. But I remember when Clark got back on Monday or whatever, I think he showed up and I got off work and I'm like, we're down in the basement in the Liberty House. You remember the Liberty House?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, yo man, how's Vegas? And he was like, bro, I don't even like crack beers, dude. And I was like, all right. He's like, I don't even want to talk about it.
See, and I came back from that same trip and I was like, that was the best weekend of my life. I had a blast. It was so funny. I had no idea what was going on that whole time. So I literally had a free trip to party in Vegas. Like
Well, I'm glad you took it, dude. I should have taken Burning Man that year because they're all like, "Yo, you want tickets to Burning Man?" Or like, we're grabbing tickets, and I was like, "Desert with you guys? No." Like, I'm scared of not being away from water. Like, I'm really not trying to go to the desert for a whole week. But now, in hindsight, no one can get into Burning Man, so I'm like, man, I should have went to Burning Man when it was like, "Hey, Trav, here's a ticket. You want to go?" Yeah, there was all sorts of cool stuff back then, 2010.
I'll take the desert with neon lights over the desert with people who haven't bathed in a week. Like I picked the right trip.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna switch up the subject on you here.
Okay.
All right, so what's your take on what's going down right now? Like Russia, like just like
my take, like I have a boring take on this because everyone's supposed to have a hot take on exactly what's happening and exactly how they feel and who's evil and who's doing what. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. You have to have a strong opinion to, really to be heard, anywhere, if you want it on social media or on the cable news or even on podcasts, wherever. And I'm just like, I don't know. I was raised with humility. It's like, if you don't know, say you don't know.
That's fair.
So I'm like, the only thing I know, look, I don't want innocent people to die, obviously. And so I obviously oppose that. Obviously there are innocent people who are dying. We know that for a fact. And I want that to stop. Yeah. But it's like, beyond that, like, obviously, so many of those early stories that were coming out have turned out to be debunked, and then people are debunking the debunkers.
It's just another cluster. It's like a whole other. It's like a whole other 2020 over. Right. Yeah.
So it's like I'm at the point where it's like, well, I for my own sanity, I have to not care. I have to just turn this stuff off, and it sucks. It's like you obviously want to help. You want to be able to do something, and you hear about this war and all these people dying. Like, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And I don't know, to me, it's like, ultimately, well, we have so many problems, first of all, in this country. Like someone posted a video of Seattle, like they're just the other day, like someone took this video, like going through some neighborhood in Seattle, and there's just lines of people just openly doing drugs right in the middle of the street and walking around like zombies, and there's garbage everywhere. And it's like, maybe we shouldn't be sending hundreds of millions of dollars to the other side of the world when we're not doing so hot here in a lot of ways. So that, to me, I'm just like, I more and more, I feel like I just want to try to act locally, because I want to control what I can control.
Okay,
so let's take care of that first.
I mean, that's a good segue in. My opinion on this is all domestic problems go away. Russia man bad.
Yeah,
that's like the most beautiful scapegoat ever. Cause like every bit of programming our entire lives, like from Red Dawn, like my first movie that got me like just,
that's one of my all-time favorite.
I was like, yo, bro, America gets invaded and we just like slam out. Like every American has like this sick, like, like this invasion, like it happens one day, right? And we just like win.
Well, and look, that could happen one day, and
it could
be prepared for. Like, I'm not. Red Dawn's one of my all-time favorite movies, and I think we should be prepared for that kind of situation. But and again, I think Russia man bad, but that, you're right. I think it's also a good way to take people's eyes off of whatever's happening domestically, to just say, let's worry about this issue that's way over here.
Like the trucker convoy went away immediately, like a week ago. Like a week ago.
And COVID.
Canada has a bank run because they're locking bank accounts, because the normies are waking up to like, wait a second, the conspiracy theory people weren't wrong. It's like, no, guys, like I sell silver and gold for a reason. Like you need to get your stuff, or crypto, you do whatever, but just don't be reliant on like some digits in your phone app that like one day can just lock you out and be like, oh, well.
That's right. That's my thing with Bitcoin. It's like, I'm all for, I love the idea of having a currency that's outside of the Federal Reserve, because I don't trust that system whatsoever. I mean, we've seen how much they devalued the dollar last
no doubt years.
So I absolutely love the idea of an alternative currency. But yeah, I'm with you. It's like, okay, if we ever really actually did get to the point where the dollar was literally collapsing, and we wanted this alternative, do you think like the internet would be operating properly? Do you think we'd actually be able to be trading this currency online the way we're doing it now?
I mean, look, I see it like you got to have, like, you can't just have a Navy, and you can't just have an Air Force, and you can't just have a ground force.
Yeah.
You got to have your silver, gold, copper.
Diversify.
And that's a part of your game. Yep. And like, even just like physical goods and barterability, like that's most, like Cuban is always like anti-gold, he's like pro Bitcoin now. He was anti-Bitcoin for a long time. Like when we were about Bitcoin, Cuban was talking crap to us and probably cost us billions. Okay. probably cost us billions, because it always gave us like this, like, maybe we are, at least with me, I was always like, okay, maybe this is just a stupid libertarian thing, you know, but at the same time, it's a fixed currency, which at the time I didn't understand how you could have 21 million coins and run theoretically a global currency on it. And it's just a matter of price, it turns out. Yeah. To which when Clark was the original guy that introduced me to Bitcoin, Clark and Kyle, Clark had traded a Bitcoin for a beer. And I was like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I either am not understanding this, or Bitcoin is worth $1 million and we need to get the Bitcoin. Like, and it was just kind of like one of those things where, like, at the time, I don't think anyone was really ready for, like, okay, Trav, stop, you know, you're high. Like, seriously, right. You know, like,
that was my reaction when I first heard about Bitcoin in like 2010. I was like, okay, you nerds talking about your online money. Like, I just thought it was some video game kind of thing. And so, you know, I ignored it.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing is we didn't know at the time, but like Ross took it and turned it into, I mean, literally Ross is probably responsible for like actually making Bitcoin really work. Like, he's first used.
It was like huge. I mean, it was
he's a huge building block
marketplace.
Yeah. I mean,
that was definitely the first like real application of Bitcoin on a major scale.
For sure. I need to do the actual math on what they stole from him and the time period to get my numbers exactly right. Yeah. But to my record, Ross is the only entrepreneur in American history that, like, in under 24 months made Instagram look like nothing. Because Instagram was a success story at that point. It was, they sold for $1 billion, only being 18 months old and having like less than 12 employees or less than 20 employees. But like, Ross had figured out a way to run a completely decentralized company where the other actors in the company didn't know each other. They had screen names and things like that, but they didn't know who they were. Yeah. And he ran like this global decentralized marketplace, and he accumulated Bitcoin for the transactions of doing this. Never tried to get rich at all. And then just on what they stole from him alone, I'm pretty sure the kid is worth multiples of $10 billion. And he did it in only like 24 months.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy how fast it's scaled up. And again, because like you couldn't have predicted that whatsoever.
Well, I mean, what's crazy though, is I think he's the first guy to run a straight like Rothbard, Hayek, like playbook.
He was like he very much believed in the principles, which is kind of what got him in trouble, you know, because his whole idea was, look, I know that there are drugs going through this marketplace. I know that's a big part of it, but you know, it's like, it's better than people buying it on the street, because he's like, you know, we have reviewers of the sellers and we have reviews of the buyer. So it's at least a safer way. If drugs are gonna be traded, it's a safer way than doing it on the streets. And it's like, okay, but that's still highly illegal. Like, you're obviously the authorities aren't gonna accept that kind of explanation.
Yeah. I mean, but when we were younger though, when you are younger, like, I mean, I'm still like this in many ways, but it's just like, okay, I get it. There's this big bad government that can bust in here anytime they want with a SEAL team and drag me out. They'll never hear from me again. At the same time, fuck them. Like, you know, like, that's just, and like, I mean, he was early, and I don't think he had like a lot of, obviously didn't have the resources at the time and the support at the time. And like, you know, he wasn't like a real cartel guy. He wasn't trying to be a cartel guy, you know, people didn't even know,
right?
Like, they didn't even know like that, you know, how big of an organization he had built.
And that was the whole kind of the media battle, was the media really try to build him into this cartel guy. I mean, he was the next Pablo Escobar. Like, really
exactly.
Try to build him. And you know, again, the murder for hire and all this stuff. And then when you kind of read what he was writing, and you talk to his mom, who obviously is biased, but you know, you still get an insight into kind of what kind of kid he was. And you're like, he's not Pablo Escobar. Like, no. Again, you can completely say, hey, what he was doing was illegal. And you can say, look, he should be locked up because of what he was doing was illegal and because it led to this negative stuff. But you cannot turn him into this kingpin. I mean, that just wasn't.
No, but I mean, also, like, I mean, really, because we knew that this was going to happen. And in a way, it's a blessing it's a blessing to me, because it was like a delayed start for me, like, in a way. But it was like, he built this decentralized organization. He did it anonymously. So he built the first DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. Basically, he built the first DAO. Only thing he didn't do is sell equity in Silk Road, which he could have done, but that was before like IPO or ICOs. You know, like, he struck at a free market, and he struck at a decentralized currency.
Right.
I mean, he literally blasted the government on the only thing that they can control, which is like the currency and the people.
Right.
And he did it with like a 24-year-old attitude, a 22, 23-year-old attitude of just like naiveness. Like you just don't know.
Yeah.
Like you just don't know.
Right. And right. And again, it's like, oh, you wish like he would have brought someone in who could have like reined it in and said, hey, there's a way to do this that isn't going to send the FBI after you. But again, if you do that, then if he had that kind of attitude, he might not have created the thing in the first place. And
well, yeah, it worked because it worked.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
so it's just a sad, I mean, the whole thing's a sad story. I mean, just again, like this kid, whatever you think of what he did, he's a brilliant kid, unquestionably. Brilliant kid. And that he's just wasting that brilliance in prison. He wasn't a violent person. Again, there's no evidence of him ever committing a violent act or telling someone to commit a violent act. He's not a threat to society. I mean, just what we miss out as a people on having him behind bars for the rest of his life it's sad.
I mean, that's still to be determined. I mean, I know he's got 220 years there. Like, I get it. But like the way that this empire is crumbling, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm picking up my pickup truck 5 years from now. I mean, I'm serious, you know, like, I mean, this thing's going down quick. I mean, we're just a currency collapse away from this thing really going to a shit show.
Yeah. And I hope it doesn't. I hope we can get him free before it gets
without it. But I mean, dude, I'm looking at this thing like, like a lot of things might be different 10 years from now, and we also might have at some point in time, the millennials may take power and be like, like we've tried to run, I want to run McCobe. I want to run him as like the
boomers are going to be running for president for the next 200 years. They will be sticking their skeletal arms out of the grave at their ballots.
It's probably true.
I don't think the boomers are ever going to go away.
I mean, dude, the boomers are really screwing over our country. Like screwing us so bad, dude. Like if the boomers had just like left and just like peacefully retired, we'd be doing so much better right now.
I mean, it's just when you go through the list of just they took the most successful, beautiful country that's ever been known to exist at its peak,
at its peak,
and just have been running it into the ground for the fact that this country still exists as well and runs still as well as it
shows
does,
you how strong it is.
It's a testament to what those guys did 250 years ago to establish this country. The fact that we can still, after everything we've been through the last couple of decades, and again, it's hard for me to just not feel sad about some of this stuff.
I mean, dude, the boomers, I mean, this is like real, like taking it back here. It's like 1991, China is a shithole. Russia implodes and it divides peacefully. And you can thank Putin for that. Like they don't have a civil war. They no nuclears go off. None of that. Yeah, sure. There were some tanks sold. I'm sure there's some arms deal. People stole money. I get it. But like ultimately, they divide into the different territories, Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. They divide the debt of the Soviet Union. And then, according to him, Russia has paid it all and Ukraine has not paid their part. But nonetheless, in 1991, America had the head start of head starts on top of head starts. Yeah. And in only 30 years, and this is when the boomers were 30 years old. So the boomers, at that point in time, the boomers were 20 to 30 years of age, right in that, actually 20 years technically. So they're probably like 35, like 18 to like that range, whatever they would have been in 1991. My parents are them, so they were like 28 at the time, so like right there at that range. The boomers essentially start to take over there in the 90s with the biggest head start in human history. And it's somehow, by the time you get to 2020, it's a complete clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Which is just like, it's like, how did you do this in only 30 years? And it was all about like consumption and like green grass and like more cars and just like all the, 4,000 square foot houses. Like that was the dream, whether they achieved it or not. And it's just like at the end of this whole thing, and then like their kids get ribbons and trophies and like at the end of this thing, we've got this like entire population of millennials which have this massive demographic issue, because for the first time in history, we are starting to see women in their 30s that are unmarried and childless, or child without being married, you know, which is whatever. But like the demographics are very different.
The replacement rate, we're going to be underwater on the replacement rate within a couple of years.
Yeah, and so you have this entire like generation of women that was raised to like, oh, push your career first, go do your marketing job and all that stuff. And now they're like getting to this part where like that window is like closing out, and it's like the next 20 years is going to be really telling, because we essentially told these women like, go be men. And like, it's a man's world, and so you got to be a man about it. And then we, at the same time, we beta-tized our men on a whole different bunch of levels there. But like our men, and so like we've gotten to this spot where like really truly like weak men create hard times, and like the boomers grew up in the best of times created by strong men, which were their parents, World War II veterans. And like, so they grew up like the boomers never saw a crisis. Like they saw Vietnam and they protested, big deal, but they never went to Vietnam. You know, they weren't that generation that went to Nam. You know, they were just like, you know, they were the 60s kids, and like, or the babies, you know, and like, and now like they're in the spot of leadership, and like to see them throw around like the SWIFT system as though they just like, it's just like, oh yeah, we'll just cut the 7th largest economy in the world off from the SWIFT system, except their oil. We're not gonna sanction their oil. But today they announced not importing any Russian oil. We'll see how that goes. But like, it's just like, man, you guys are driving this thing over a cliff, not to mention like the debt, not to mention the interest rates. I mean, the whole thing to me looks like at some point in time this decade, this just cannot land smoothly.
That's kind of where who knows what the timeline is, but when you look at any kind of numbers, you're like, oh, this is not sustainable on so many different levels. And and like you said, we're exactly seeing weak men create hard times. I mean, we're seeing the definition of that. Everyone sees that. You look at any polls and you ask people, you know, do you have faith in whatever institution? And nobody has faith in the institution. Nobody has faith that the people running the government are actual leaders, that the people running our corporations are the actual leaders, are anyone running any kind of major institution. Nobody believes that those are strong leaders. Those are the people who, you know, we've created such a bureaucratic society, not just in government, but everywhere in major corporations, that it's like the people who rise to the top are just the people who've done the best at succeeding in gaming the bureaucracy. We have the best bureaucrats running, not the best leaders.
Yeah, we have the best rent seekers.
Right. And I mean, you see that even in the military. I mean, you look at like the great military leaders from World War II, Patton and MacArthur, and those guys would never make it to general in this day and age. They get kicked out of the military for being offensive or for being too hard on their guys or whatever it is. Are
you saying you're not about our quadruple vax trans soldiers? Because I think that the way we win this whole uranium man, Ukrainian? Sorry. What's that? The
Ukrainian?
The Ukrainian.
I don't think we want to be sending uranium anywhere.
No. No, it's just uranium's on my mind. I
don't want to know why.
Well, that's one of my speculations, actually. I just think that it's just primed to like pump at this point. There's like 6 producers of that as far as investment goes. But no, like I think that what we do, like Kyle told me this the other day, is like, you know, what we need to do, Trav, is we need to send more rainbow flags, because that would be so powerful. And I couldn't stop laughing.
Right, and that's like you see these stupid things as the trending topics on Twitter, you know, and you're just like, come on, like, you really think that these are the biggest issues in the world right now? We have open drug markets in our cities. You know, we have crime that's rising to the highest level. We have, again, people aren't having kids. We have testosterone rates are at their lowest. Like, that's such a weird thing. When you start reading those numbers, like, shouldn't that be the biggest issue in the entire world, that men aren't producing testosterone at healthy levels? Like, that's the foundation of humanity.
Yeah, I mean, but dude,
we can't reproduce. We physically are unable to reproduce. Why isn't that on the front page of every newspaper in the world? That's what blows my mind.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, it's. I mean,
nobody wants to like. We're not putting research dollars into that? Like, what's going on?
I mean, it's pretty basic. Like, the rise of birth control pills, like, literally correlates with the decrease in testosterone. So, like, the concept of, like, think about city water. Like, hormones don't get filtered out, and it gets recycled, goes into the city water system, and then it gets pumped right back out after it's filtered.
Yeah.
You're pumping estrogen water.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't know. I've heard that. I've never like looked into like have there been formal studies showing that? I don't know that.
I mean there's just environmental estrogens now, like everywhere, at least it seems like it. And then obviously there's a conspiracy. I hate to call it a conspiracy at this point because it feels like we're out of those because they've all came true, but no one has like apologized yet. Like
I always say I believe nothing, but I'm willing to believe anything. You know, like I don't feel I don't have the confidence of saying yes, this is what's happening, but also you can tell me the wildest conspiracy theory at this point. I'm like, yeah, maybe. I'm not willing to just cast anything aside.
I mean, this was the first year where I really sat back and I thought, like, when I was a kid, something was off. And then this is like the first year I'm driving my truck, like not that long ago. It's kind of embarrassing. And I'm just like, we didn't FaceTime the moon in 1969. like we didn't FaceTime the moon. Like, you know what I mean? And like when I was a kid, I was immediately like, there's just no way that's happening. Like we can't even do that now. You know what I mean? But like this year I'm driving around the truck and I'm just like, yeah, that did happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I want to get a telescope and find I want to just like be able to zoom in on that spot and just I need to see the flag and the footprints. Like if I see the flag and the footprints, I'm good.
I'm good. Right. Right. I get that. I mean and that's one of the things. Like I don't know. I have bigger issues that I'm worried about whether or not we land on the moon. Like it's fun. It's fun. Like I like having fun, like speculating about that stuff.
At this point, it's just like what else is alive?
Right. Exactly.
Like we've been psyoped. We're like 9 psyops deep, dude.
Right. Exactly.
Like I remember like the second the pandemic hit and I was just like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. Like, here comes your digital pass. Here comes your vax. Here comes all that stuff. And everyone's like, that's never going to happen. They've never like, et cetera, et cetera. And then it was so crazy how soon, like that once they did the mask thing, it was like, and they got the buy-in. I saw it even in my own friend group. I had to start making cuts, dude. I had to start cutting team, dude. I was like, man, like, dude, and dudes and their wives.
I hate
like, bro, if I've got a friend with bad wife and the wife is like bought into like this real feminist, like, daddy government, like make everything faker and gayer bullshit. I'm just like, bro, I gotta cut you. Like, I gotta cut you.
I mean, like, that's the part that like on both sides is like, that really is what upsets me, is that so many people like cut out friends and family. And I mean, I guess that's what you have to do. Like, if you're that fundamentally disagreeing on like, people are saying, I won't have you over my house if you're not vaccinated. Like, then you're like, okay, I guess like we can't be friends then.
We can't be friends, dude.
I can't come to your house.
Yeah.
Like, but it's like, that also like just makes me really, really sad that it's, it gets like, and like,
I mean, it's clear divide and
like
conquer.
Nothing to me is more, there's no bond stronger than your family and your close friends. And it's like when you let something drive a wedge between that, I mean, again, that's, you study history. I mean, that's how every totalitarian regime does it, is you split up the families, you split up, you get people to rat on their neighbors and their family and their friends.
Yeah, dude.
You don't even trust the people closest to you.
No.
And that's where I get real like, oh,
that's the Italian in you, bro. That's the Italian in you.
You start splitting people that way.
Yeah.
There's no deeper evil than splitting families apart based on these policies. That's like, who fucking cares?
Yeah. Well, I mean, dude, it was the first time I saw the difference between like the working class and the email class. Cause I straddled the two. Right. Like in the mornings, I'm selling precious metal. I'm in the office. I'm doing video editing. I put some hours on my computer, but then I put some hours on the tractor and like the grind, stump grinder, the trucks and like the dump truck. Like I need to do that just to go out and be in motion. And like, just, I gotta hear diesel turbos spin and stuff. Like I just like it. And like, there's this clear difference, like when I was out in the afternoon with these guys versus like dealing with these guys, and then you'd see these people on Twitter and stuff like that. And they're like, totally like, they're like, oh, I love this work from home, work from my PJs, order stuff on my app, have it sent to me. But yet they're not like, they have no clue how that happens. They have no idea what trucker, how any of that stuff works. They have just, and so it was like, we've built a society where we mess with bytes and bits, and the real thing is like build a WordPress site and build a blog with like 90 backlinks and like have followers and good, that's a good start, and then go from there. But like at the same time, like the one guy like who wants to have a fleet of like 12 trucks and stuff, we've essentially like incentivized him to be like, yeah, your insurance costs are going to be like literally $9,000 a month, like not kidding. Your workers that you're going to be able to employ are going to be like, of this caliber. And like it just gets to a spot where it's like, hey, listen, if you're not Walmart, you're not in this game.
Yeah.
Like Like it's either you're a one-man band or you've got like a big operation, or you're best to just be like a knowledge worker. But then like who welds on stuff, who builds stuff?
China and Russia, it's like that. Now you start outsourcing that stuff to countries that hate our way of life, and you get in this situation. I mean, that's the crazy thing, and that's and obviously you're someone who actually works for a living, so like you're able to see this stuff. And I'm lucky. I went to a couple of fancy schools, and I had a nice life growing up, but where I grew up was a really low income area, and so like half my friends lived in trailer parks. I spent a lot of time hanging out in trailer parks and hanging out with people like that, and so I feel very close with people who actually have to work for a living, even though I'm not one of those people. I like to pretend I am, but I have a lot of friends who are those people. I have people who really get their hands dirty. And so I feel so deeply for these people that everything is so cast against them because we're run by people who only went to fancy schools and only grew up in gated neighborhoods, and just you're a foreign species to them, the people who actually have to work for a living. And so that's like, I've talked to so many people who are like, when we did the lockdown, it's like, we'll just, we won't go to work for 2 weeks. Big deal. We'll just, we'll work from home. And look, if it needs to be more than 2 weeks, fine. If it needs to be 3 months, we should just lock down for 3 months. And you're like, do you understand that half the country, 60% of the country, 70% of the country can't do that and feed their families?
Yeah.
Do you understand? Do you understand that not everyone lives the way you live?
I mean, I think
again, it all comes back to humility for me. You have to take a step back and think, okay, if there's this many people who are opposed to this, let me try to understand why. And maybe I'll still disagree with them, but there's a difference between just having a difference of opinion and just not caring about what the other person thinks or how the other person lives. And that's what drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, so we got to go into hard times. I mean, that's just when this thing hits, in my opinion, because I look at this like on both sides of the tracks. I mean, as best I can. I'm biased to a point, but like when this thing hits, I'm just calling it, like, not to alarm anyone, but the 1930s are going to look like a trip to Disney World. I think that this is going to be epic on scales we've never seen, because we're on a 250-year revolutionary cycle. And like what we saw at the very beginning, I'm actually working on this new channel. Hopefully I'll be launching it this month. I've been working on it every morning. It's this entire book right here. And it's the entire monetary history of like how we got here. And what I've learned is that there's been 3 times where gold and the Dow have ratioed 1-to-1. And there's a pattern to it. It's like every 50 to 70 years. And like when you look at like, okay, 1860, not a great time. 1933, not a great time. 1980, not a great time. Like better time, but not a great time, right? And when you look at these different things, and then you look at these like 250-year revolutionary cycle, which some people disagree with me on, but like I think that this new technology enables problems, essentially, like going back 2 revolutions ago to Martin Luther, which is like the separation of church and state, where he gets a printing press and it becomes like a piece of technology and he gets his hands on it. He prints up pamphlets and he's like, I got an idea. You can go direct to God, screw the priests. These guys are like these guys are over. And the priests are like, no, that's not how it's going to work. We're going to burn a lot of people at the stake, like a lot. And then the kings at the time were like, yo, we're kind of okay decreasing the power of the priests because they got a lot of power and we'd rather have some. And the kings became very powerful. So 250 years later, you've got like these people in America, the colonialists, and you've got like the British, and they're like, yo, man, like what's up with the king? He's kind of far away. Screw the king. And so, and there's one piece of technology that not only was the printing press being well used at that point, newspapers and, Franklin has got he's circulating the Federalist letters and all that. But the rifle is a unique piece of American technology where they just rifled the barrel and sent a musket ball and it was more accurate. And in a time when it takes like a minute to load a gun, your shot being like even 2 times more accurate makes a huge difference. And so it created this weird opportunity where the Brits had to cross an ocean, to set up camp, if you will. And the colonialists were already like hardened farmers from like working the land. And so essentially like they just had this one split moment in time. And we're on that same exact like trajectory with the currency. Like, because we're right at this spot, like where we're at this end of this long-term debt cycle. Like, none of the currency that we're circulating is actually real. A lot of it's just digits in a screen. Some people are like, Bitcoin doesn't feel real to me. And like, if you understand the electrical draw to make Bitcoin, you're like, yeah, actually that thing's representing like 20, 30 grand in electrical energy for sure. Maybe it's selling for 40 or 50, but at some point in the halving cycle, that thing's going to be costing, well, ideally the cost of electricity goes to zero. That's a whole nother conversation. Like, that's how you fix it. Like, Bitcoin is a 51% attack on global energy supply. So at some point in time, like, the best thing you can do with energy is literally mine Bitcoin. And if you don't like it, oh well, because that's how it's designed. Like, but like, we're at this spot where whether it's Bitcoin or something else, when Trudeau tries to shut down your bank accounts, or, you know, Biden doesn't allow me to continue buying Russian stocks this morning, okay, because I've been buying them every freaking morning as they've been going down. Every time I buy, I go down 50%, so I buy more. And today I was going to double up my position. And then they're like, nope, capital flows are stopping. The idea that they can control how capital flows at this point in the game is on its last lap, because you and I are already free in the sense I can send you Bitcoin right now. I can send you Monero if we're worried about the privacy and tracking. We can do that right now. But I can't buy equities yet. They're not represented because Wall Street's got to get cut in, and then so they can play all these games. But like, what happens is I think that we're going to move to like a DeFi like situation where the laws of economics are actually going to be governing again. And like, there is such a thing as like being well funded or like having liquidity. You're not just going to be able to just print it up. So, I mean, in a positive, I think that that's where we're going. And I think it's necessary for us to move into more of like an economy of like autonomous things. I think that you need to have a money system that doesn't take 3 days to clear a credit card transaction at 3%. You know, like, I think that we need to move into that. Also, like, you can't just print up $5 billion today because you feel like it. Like, right. You can't do that. Like, things have to be real and like equal. But we're right on that thing where like we're at the end of a 90 to 100 year debt cycle. We're at the end of a 7 to 10 year business cycle, which we've extended. We're at the end, I think, of a 250 year revolution cycle. We're at the end of a 50 year technology cycle, which is very clear. If you look at, like, we stopped flying planes faster on less fuel in 1974. Exactly. So 50 years later, we're due for a new like resurgence, but the truck I drive is a 2000 and it gets 14, 15 miles to the gallon. The other truck I had was a 2012. So 12 years newer, and it got like 9 miles to the gallon. And it's like, okay, it was cleaner because it had all this exhaust stuff, but it was crappier, you know? So like, we're at this end of that. So in my opinion, all these cycles stack, and then you just get to the spot where I don't know what's going to break it. This Russia stuff, sanctioning the world's 7th largest economy, to me feels like the Goldman, the Lehman Brothers moment, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think, I don't know what's going to break it, but I think we're going to go through a gnarly depression.
Yeah. It's, I don't know about all of the cycles but I know for a fact that if you look at history, again, people like to say this is unprecedented or that's unprecedented. If you go back far enough in history, you'll find a precedent for anything. You don't have to go that far back to see what happens when someone devalues their currency. I mean, it's pretty widely accepted that one of the causes of World War II was the fact that Weimar Germany, after World War I, to pay off their debts, just started printing money, and there was rampant inflation. The economy collapsed, and you had Hitler coming and saying, "Hey, look what happened." He blamed it on the Jews because you just pick a target.
You need a fall man,
right? And
yeah.
But I mean, it goes back to devaluing the currency. I mean, it's happened again and again in history.
As
soon as you have paper currency that is controlled by a small group of people, they're going to do it to their advantage, and they're not going to be thinking about protecting it long term. They're going to be thinking about how they can benefit themselves in whatever cycle. For us, it's the 4-year cycle, it's the election cycle, you know?
Yeah.
And you're just going to keep punting the problems because people want to just see the numbers go up. They want to see the stocks go up. And as long as stocks are going up and their salaries are going up, everything's good. And so the incentive is just to keep pumping that up and up and up and up, and let the next guy deal with the come down.
I mean, the crazy thing is, like, in the 1930s, that was the end of a debt cycle. So that cycle started in the 1860s in North America, because I know my North American history a lot better. And so we have the Civil War, which was really a war of northern aggression. And it's really a failed secession because they weren't fighting over the same government. It's not like they wanted to take over Washington, D.C. They just literally, the people in Georgia just literally wanted to be left alone and just be living in Georgia. And the people in Virginia had the same exact thing. They're like, look, you do your thing over there, but we just don't want to be part of it. I mean, ultimately. And there were some other issues there, like they were paying more taxes down in the South. They were buying European farming machinery because it was of higher quality, and the North wanted them to buy their industrial goods. And and then the whole slave. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and they wanted to own slaves. I mean, that's
I mean, they did, but Lincoln was okay with that. Lincoln's totally okay with slaves. Like, right. He's got no problem with it.
Right at the very there was at the very beginning of the war, he said, look, if I could end the war and keep slavery, then fine, I would do that. Like, it wasn't, he wasn't on this crusade about ending slavery. Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he also said, like, in the border states, like, the real issue was, like, as we're adding new states, as we're stealing from the Native Americans and adding new states, are they going to be free states or slave states? And, like, so, that was an issue. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I'm reading a book now called The Impending Crisis. And it's the same crap. It's like 1840s, 1850s. People are getting pissy in Congress. They're getting pissy with each other, and they're playing all sorts of games. And it just builds in the 1850s to where it just kicks off in the 1860s. But, like, also gold goes 1-to-1 with the Dow. Dow was early back then. It was earlier days. That was a fourth turning, which is interesting. Every 80, 90 years, you get a fourth turning. And then that started when that concluded in the 1865 kind of wraps up. That's like when you get the railroads and the westward expansion and, like, all that stuff kind of happening out that way. But that cycle ends. And then, by the way, I mean, that's one of the best prosperous times for human history, I think, from like 1860 to 1929. I mean, you get airplanes, electricity, railroads, a medicine. I mean, refrigeration. It's gnarly. Yeah. No income taxes, by the way, until 1913. No income taxes. Well, who will build the roads? The same people who built the roads beforehand. They were private, man. Like, I mean, America was just a spot to be. It was like the frontier, and then that ends. Approximately. It ends in 1929. And then the deepest part of that is 1933, where they go around and they steal everyone's gold. And then there's, like, this prolonged depression. And then the way to get out of the depression is to do a global war.
Right.
So, I mean, in 1917, you get the virus, you get the Spanish flu, and then you get the crack up boom, which is the 1920s. You get a little depression recession in 1920, little, like, no one really remembers it because the government didn't do anything about it. It's self-corrected in like 6 months. But and then you get the crack up boom. So you get the roaring 20s, and then the roaring 20s, I think, is what we're in right now in a way. And then you get the stock crash, the depression, and then the war. I don't know. Right now, it just feels like all the cycles are compressing, though.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like that. Like, even people who don't know history, it's like, I think that's just the general feeling that a lot of people have, is like, there just seems to be a lot going on. There's just and it's hard to tell. Like, is that just because we have the news in front of us all day now, or is there really a lot more going on? And it's just, I think it's very, very, it's a confusing time. I mean, that's the only way I can explain. It's a very confusing time, and I don't know what to say other than I think you have to shut off the stuff that you can't control. I can't do anything about the financial system. I can't do anything about wars on the other side of the world. I can try to protect myself and my family and the people I love as much as possible. I can be ready for bad times and know how to defend myself, know how to get food, have diversified investments, and find people who are like-minded and join with them and teach each other and learn from each other. Those are the things that I can do. And I don't know what to say other than you have to try to shut off the rest, because I think that's driving people crazy. And it's, again, you want to help. There's innocent people who are dying all over the world and dying in large numbers right now. And you want to help. And I feel that, like, pull at your heartstrings. But man, I think if you want to know, like, what's the most valuable thing you can do, I think it's, you got to do what's right for your family and your community, and try to make that the strongest unit that it can possibly be, so you can withstand whatever wave is coming.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, you got to figure out where your community is going to be. I think
Right.
that's what we've been seeing.
Part.
That's what we've been seeing right now is people trying to fish. Because like, like I had dudes hit me up and they're like, yo, I'm in California. What do you think I should do? And I'm like, leave, dude.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing else to do. Like you're in California. Like it's just a matter of time before,
well, that's kind of one. I mean, obviously the last 2 years there's been so much ugly, horrible things, but one of the silver linings is that people are realizing the importance of your state and local government and your state and local communities. And people are like, they're looking at Florida, and they're looking at Texas, they're looking at Tennessee. I'm one of these people.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I want to be in a place where people think like me and people value freedom and independence and responsibility, and let people self-select and form those communities. Again, I'm someone, I like being around people who don't think like me. I like being around a diverse group of people who are going to challenge me. I feel weird if I'm with everyone who agrees with me. I start like taking different positions and have different opinions just to be different, because I get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But what you get to a point where it's like, you are so different from how I think in just terms of fundamentally how society should function, that maybe we need to go separate places. And if we can do that peacefully, I want to do it peacefully.
Yeah, if we can. I mean, I think it hasn't, there's no American fourth turning that's ever been peaceful. And for like the fourth turnings that I'm referring to, you've got the French Indian War, you've got the Revolutionary War, which at the time was called the Great War. Then you got the Civil War, which is the War of Failed Recession or Secession. Then you've got the Great Depression and World War II. And now here, because like if you look at that, it's every 81 years essentially, like right there. So I mean, what is really interesting to me is that this is the first time we've had like electricity, and that seems like a problem waiting to happen. Like, yeah, I mean, this is to your point on crypto, where you're like, yo, man, I mean, any world where crypto is taken over, I don't see the internet working well. Like that's a good point. Like if we've gone through enough turmoil where the central banks have lost control of the currency, the idea that, your FiOS is working might not be there. I mean, I agree. And that's why
maybe I don't understand. I'll plead ignorance on this, because I'm not an expert in crypto at all. So I don't know if there's some way that it works without this infrastructure that we have. But it seems to me, based on my limited understanding, that people are putting a lot of faith in the fact that all this infrastructure is still going to be in place when everything else is collapsing. I don't, maybe someone can inform me on that, but that's kind of the feeling that I get.
Where I think we're going to is like a market is going to select currencies. I don't think there's just going to be one. For example, there's not just the dollar. We think there is, but there's lots of other currencies. And I think that those currencies are not going to be government controlled. So whether it's Litecoin, Bitcoin, Monero, silver, gold, a Volt chain, so that you can spend gold. Because one of our limiting factors with gold in the past is, unless you're spending some like a tenth of an ounce of gold, like the size of a dime, is about the smallest unit of gold you can really carry around with you and not lose in your pocket. That thing's worth like $300.
Yeah.
So you're not using it for groceries.
Right.
So that's the problem with the gold standard. That's why you need silver and copper. But we're now at a spot where we can fractionalize gold if we digitalize it. So like, okay, my gold goes over to my Volt, or, whatever, my Bank of America Volt or whatever. And I'm spending, whatever on my phone at the bar, and I'm spending $20 of gold. So like, now that we can digitalize it with a blockchain, that is an option. And I think that that's an option that's likely, but I think all of these things are up for grabs.
We're in a time of change right now. That's absolutely for sure.
And I mean, that's part of the reason I do this channel is like, I want to compete for the hearts and minds and convince people that like, free markets are the way to go.
Yeah.
And I believe in the non-aggression principle. And I also like really want people to question, like, have we gotten to a point where maybe we're beyond the need for federal governments?
Yeah.
Because I personally think that we don't necessarily need a federal level. We need probably a strong local level, really good, strong local level. People need to be involved in that. You're not going to get career politicians out of the local level. I mean, you can, but that's going to be easier to turn. Maybe a state level. Get to that federal level, and all I see from this federal level is like Russia man bad, nukes on call. And I'm like, do we need that level?
Yeah, I mean that's at least like the way that people think. It's like right. It's the thing that gets people excited that makes the news is this huge international stuff. Again, as our cities burn.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like
there at least there needs to be some sort of change in the way people are thinking about these issues. Like
yeah,
let's fix our own house first. I mean, this is Jordan Peterson. It's clean your room.
yeah, yeah. It's no,
If
for
you have
real.
a
I
messy
mean,
if you have a messy bed, but you're worried about what's going on the other side of the world,
yeah,
maybe readjust your priorities.
yeah. Have you read BAP by chance?
No, I
Bronze Age
don't.
Pervert.
No.
that book's gonna draw you, and you'll read the whole thing in a day.
Okay. Who
Yeah,
wrote
I mean,
that? I never heard of that.
yeah, it's an anonymous author. He goes by BAP, and it calls I think it's the collapse of the Bronze Age or whatever. But I didn't know about the Bronze Age collapse until this past 2 years. Essentially, you've got like this period of history that's like a 2,000-3,000 year period of history, and it collapses literally in one generation. And we're talking a generation's 21 years. So it collapses in one generation. And it's literally a huge period. I mean, from here all the way back to Christ.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the West. Like you could go all the way back at the Renaissance, the Dark Ages, all that, and it collapses in 21 years. Yeah. Which I'm not saying I'm not a doomer, but I could see we have two paths. I see we're going like decentralized and like we're moving forward and we're going to be out exploring the stars and doing nanotechnology. And like, we will find a way to just do awesome things moving forward. Or we are going dark ages without any knowledge of, because like, at least in the 30s, people gardened and they weren't used to electricity. Some people had it, but it wasn't like a thing that everyone had to have. I mean, now it's like, if the electricity was out for like a week, no one has any food. Right. Like you're talking like some serious movie type of level things, like with 1 week of like a massive grid collapse. And I'm not saying like that's going to happen or whatever. I'm not saying that people won't get through. I mean, you eat Cliff Bars, you eat peanuts, you to figure it out. Like, I'm not saying that, but like you're talking about just a massive shock to the food stock in a country. And then a bunch of people were like, your email job is gone. Your air conditioner is gone. Like, there's just like, we're not built for that. Yeah. Which is terrifying in a way.
Right. I mean, you see it like, like what was it last year when Austin had like a snowstorm and they lost electricity in
that was a snowmageddon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they lost electricity for a couple of days and it was really tough for people. I don't know. I think a few people died through that. I forget exactly like how bad it got, but if that had lasted just a couple more days where this whole city's out of power, you're killing thousands of people
quick.
And right.
Yeah.
And right. Who's to say that's just not going to happen? Of course that can happen. That can happen in any city at any time. And it's, I'm not a doomer. I've been reading, Tucker Max. He got famous for writing I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell.
Yeah.
Like, these goofy books, but he's really become, like a serious thinker and writer when it comes to these issues. He calls it doomer optimism. I don't think he invented it, but he's been writing about what he calls doomer optimism, which is, hey, look, things can get really bad. It doesn't mean they have to get bad. And it also doesn't mean if they do get bad, we're all going to die. Prepare yourself so that if and when things get bad, you and your family and your community can survive through it. And that's, to me, that's the way to think about it. It's like, I don't want to like sit and ruminate on all of the ways things can go bad and just be miserable and not do anything because of it. It's live your life, enjoy where we are currently, but in the back of your mind, know things can go bad at any moment and take the small steps you can take to actually improve things. And so Tucker Max really has a couple articles where he's written about all of that and what he's doing. And he has money, so he can kind of do these big picture stuff, but he also talks about what you can do on a small day-to-day scale as well if you're not someone with millions of dollars.
I'll have to pick that book up. I like Tucker. He definitely made like a 180, because he's like Mr. Family Man now. Right, he's out in Texas, right? Isn't he out doing that?
He's outside of Austin. So he bought I think like he had been in the city for a while and he just bought a huge ranch. He calls it, he says, in Texas, they call it a ranchette. He only has 100 acres. It's a small ranch in Texas.
All right. So this is a perfect segue into this concept called metamodernism. I was calling it on my channel and definitely on Instagram. If you guys aren't following over there, my Instagram stories are pretty uncut. I'm waiting to get banned on my stories, but because I don't post on Instagram, it's fine. But on my stories, I say some wild shit. And I was calling it like, I was learning about it from the guys like Kyle and those guys. They were talking about along these lines. And essentially they're like, Trav, just like start reading about metamodernism. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go. So I started calling it meta gay, right? Because I realized I need to probably form like a 501c3 nonprofit of like my own religious institution that I call the meta gays, because you can't attack meta gays because we're peaceful, like we're peaceful people. And like you can't come after us. And so I was just driving it with these guys and like annoying them for like the last 2 years on this meta gay concept. But this meta modern thing, before Meta came out and like called themselves Meta or whatever, right. Facebook taking my name on me, is like this idea of like think like city bearded hipster dude moves out to the countryside, brews his own beer, and like raises bees. And maybe he has like a bee beer type of thing going on, but he still has like his office email job. But he's like making more money now because he's making 80 grand a year from a city job, but he's like living out like Kyle was out in like Rochester. And so it's like, okay, he's making good money. He's also got like, you know, the kids homeschooling, the wife at home. Like, you know, so he's doing like he's finding a way to get back to like 1950s America in a way. But yet also like, so it's in a way, it's like going back to your roots, but yet you're still doing very modern type of stuff. Yeah. And maybe this advances more so like in the invention of like, or the ad of you've now got like maybe a 3D printer at some point in time. And now you're starting to like get really into, I don't know, call it go-karts or whatever it is. And now you've got this like small, I don't want to call it a manufacturing plant in your basement, but essentially you're now like a micro manufacturer. And so 20 years from now, when we look back at this and we're like, oh, supply crisis is I can't get oil filters for my truck because that's one of my problems that we're, you know, I've stocked up oil filters. Maybe those are now being 3D printed by some like weird bearded hipster guy who like raises bees, has an office job, has some chickens, has some cool kids, and like maybe he's weird and like he's got some solar and like it actually starts to like become this new, and like we're not so reliant on like China for PPP and like so we start to become like, okay, our gross domestic product actually improves, our family situations improve, our health improves, our cash flows abundantly improve. So now we've got cash flow coming from, you know, 5 different income streams, and we've got the kids involved in that. And like it's a step away from like a massive office environment or like a big corporation, because I feel like and this is something I've been talking with McCoben about, like I feel like corporatism is like you don't have to be worried about communism. Communism's not coming. Like we've tried communism a lot and communism doesn't work. No communists want communism. Okay, they like their Apple iPads. They're not, communism is not coming, but corporatism most certainly could be coming, and that is some dangerous shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, so anyway, this metamodernism idea is kind of like that, where it's, I mean, does that make any sense?
Yeah, all? No, that's, and I think, I mean, that's, again, it's like kind of the beauty of modern technology. Like a lot of what we've been talking about is anti-modernism, but one of the beauties of modern technology is you can work remotely. And so again, that's one of the things you saw a lot of people moving away from the cities, a lot of people saying, I don't want to have to commute into San Francisco to go to Google every single day. And it's funny now that a lot of the companies are trying to get people to come back to the office, and people are like, no, we're productive where we are, and we don't need to be in this 60-story building in the middle of the city.
Yep.
Under fluorescent lights.
That's a perfect example. Like now that building is like, that market crash has to come eventually.
Yeah.
Like somebody, that debt has to get washed out somewhere. But what an amazing condo situation. But people don't want to be there yet. So now you're starting to think like maybe we do restaurant, we do gym on the bottom, we do condos up top. You know, like we do pool in the very, you know, like it starts to be like, I've seen a lot of like urban vertical growing things. I didn't realize how efficient it was, but it's basically like you have your lights, kind of like a grow up, like get your lights on the wall and you have your plants on like a rotisserie chicken type of setup. And then your factory worker or your farmer worker, one, you have no bugs or pesticide problems. You don't need those items, fertilizer issues. You don't need that. And then your worker is essentially stationary and the plants kind of move and come to him, you know? And so like, I mean, I'm not saying that's happening immediately, but I think going through hard times incentivizes that to happen. I mean, just the fact, like, I mean, I've been looking at my own property. Turns out you can do like 1,200 chickens on an acre if you do it like right. and I'm talking like free range and chickens, like stuff that's like not cage.
Yeah.
If chicken goes to like $20 and it's not available anywhere, and I can turn chickens every 10 weeks, and I've got 6 acres, it starts to get to like, I could do like 200 a year.
And what's so cool about this stuff is like, this is where all the traditional political boundaries just completely collapse, because this is stuff that appeals to the left-wing hippies, like you said. It appeals to the right-wing preppers. It's like everyone can kind of get on board, because again, everyone kind of naturally has that inclination of like, yeah, I want to be able to raise my own food. Like, that sounds nice, and I just don't know how I can get from being in the city, working this tech job, to that. But I think that's appealing to a lot of people, because there's just something that is missing. I think I talked to a lot of people about this, and it's hard for anyone to really put words to it, but it's like, when you're paid online, your work is online, you're not physically transacting money, you're not physically transacting work. There's an emptiness that comes from all that. Like, you're missing out on something. And it's like, again, there's a lot of conveniences to that. It's nice. I can work wherever I want to work. It's nice that I don't have to break my back to do my labor. And so again, I'm not saying this is all negative, but there are negatives to it. And there's just something that's intangible that's missing when you're not doing stuff with your hands. You're not face to face with people. And people I think, want to figure out a way, how do we merge kind of the benefits of modern technology with the benefits of the traditional way of doing things.
Like, somebody's got to build Apple laptops, no doubt.
Right.
No doubt.
And that's
like,
we wouldn't be able to have this conversation if it weren't for modern technology. So I love all of this. And how do we take that goodness and also be able to say, but I want to have land. I want to be able to raise a family. I want to be able to grow my own food.
Yeah. I mean, so I think that's like, I mean, when I look at this whole mess of a situation, like Governor Trav, that's probably what I would do. Be like, I'd pitch that idea. Like, hey, let's incentivize this. Let's give tax refunds for this. Let's make this like, let's make this more of a doable thing and get people on board with this thing, as opposed to just plugging people in as like cogs in the wheel and then constantly gaslighting them to get them like all like it's always a crisis. Like, I mean, right now we're gonna have an energy crisis, then we're gonna have a food crisis, and we know this is coming, but it's like, and then we had like a health crisis, and everything's a crisis until you reach, I mean, in history, you reach some sort of climax event, and then everyone gets it out of their system. And then it's like, okay, we're done. Like, after you fly enough like bombing runs into Berlin, you can't wait to get home and buy a golden retriever and get married.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that's what we saw after war. That's where the boomers came from, was people coming home from war. They want to settle down and have kids. And absolutely.
Yeah, but that was a long time coming, because you got the roaring 20s, and then, you got the 30s, and things are kind of crappy. And then you got like, I mean, and then it builds up into World War II. And so, I mean, I think that getting off of the highway to hell, it would be like great if we could. I don't know if the US political elite want this, because for them, like, they are like French Revolution, like pre-French Revolution right now. Like, these people have not a clue. Like, just they're like in la la land. Like it was like,
exactly. That's what I mean. They're in a different world. They are so disconnected from what the average person feels, that to them it's like, hey, my net worth went up 8 times during the recession. All of my stock went up hugely. So it's
like, this is great. Awesome. We've got like 20% unemployment and stuff like that. And the unemployment numbers keep getting worse, but this is awesome for me. Yeah. It's, I mean, and that's
so when you have that disconnection, and it's like, no, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what your philosophy on economics is. It's like, when you have that much disconnect between the people in power and the average working person, you're setting yourself up for some kind of clash. There's going to be huge issues. We have that kind of gap, and there's got to be some solution to fill that. You cannot have these two completely separate societies try to function together.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is like, so I see the metamodernism idea as like the healing part, right? Where, okay, things do collapse, but it doesn't matter. It collapsed in the Soviet Union, but there were parallel systems. So, okay, things collapse, right? The hyperinflation happens, this and that. But then you come out to my farm and you're like, hey, man, can I pay you in Litecoin? Can I pay you in Dogecoin? Okay, how do you get Litecoin? You mine it yourself, like those options are there, right? How do you get eggs? You make them yourself. And that period of time doesn't last forever. you know, eventually somebody becomes like the new Tyson of chicken, you know, and somebody becomes like, these things happen, but they do it in a way where it's like, do we need to steroid up our chickens and like keep them in cages and do all this inhumane stuff? And like, you know, so, but then at the same time, I see this very clear Agenda 2030 situation, and they're executing on it well. And so I see this as like this, like Reason did a great video on this yesterday, which was the Great Reset. And they were like, yeah, more like the Great Escape. And I was like, that's an interesting way to think about it. They're like, look, people are leaving the system, whether you like it or not. People are choosing to exit. And yet you've got this Davos crowd, this like super elites. I mean, 520 private jets at Davos to tell you not to drive your car. Like, yeah. Yeah. And so
how are you so blind that you don't see how that looks to the average person?
Because they don't care.
Right.
They don't care. And so, and the average dude's not really thinking through it either. You know, like he's just living his life. I mean, they got him so like in the box already, like where he's worried about paying his mortgage, taking care of it. They told him this bag of lies where it's like, you know, what's cool? Like you see like this new Toyota Corolla, which I understand is like, if you're going to buy a car, apparently, because I've done a little research on this, the Toyota Corolla is a great way to go for like a new car. If you're like, I'm going to go buy a brand new car, I guess for the money, like that's one of like the ones to get, right?
They're reliable.
Well,
right.
They always got like this new version of whatever, and like they don't change anything, and they got the payment numbers on it and stuff. You know what's really freaking cool? Getting like a 1970 Camaro. You know what I mean? Like getting like, yeah, I see this. You know what I mean? Like getting like a 1984 square body like Chevy. Like that's pretty unique. Also like 10 grand. I mean, maybe not right now, you know, but like those are things where it's like you can escape like the trap of like being in debt and like being on this gerbil wheel where you can sit back and think. But what I see, like, I mean, I like through the apps, like the people on the TikTok and stuff, it's like 15-second time stuff. It's like you're programming your mind to like every 7 or 15 seconds, I need a new dopamine hit. And it's like, even my wife and I've been talking about like my cell phone going to a flip phone because I genuinely miss my flip, like my razor. Yeah. And I'm just like, you know, I'm looking at like, okay, what do I get done in the course of a day? What really matters? Like what really moves the needle in life right now? Like I want to finish, I'm working on a property. I'd like to get a personal airplane. Okay. So that's money. So what, okay. So how much money do I want to make? Okay. What helps that direction? And if it doesn't help that direction, does it need to be around?
Right.
Like at all? Right. Like, and so, I mean, but I do see this, like, I don't know. Do you see that at all? Like, do you see this, like this reset, this?
Yeah, well, yeah, like it's, of course. I mean, we have the social media is everywhere. And it's funny how it's gone from like, you know, YouTube, which was longer videos, to like Facebook or Instagram, which is like shorter videos and pictures, to like TikTok, which is just these quick 6-second videos. It's like even the social media has like gone from shorter and you know longer time frame to a shorter time frame in terms of how it keeps our attention. I don't know where it's all supposed to lead. Like I just listened to Mark Zuckerberg and Lex Friedman, and
yep, I saw that one.
It's like some of it is like, oh, you know, you kind of, it humanizes Mark Zuckerberg, so you kind of see where he's coming from. But then some of it, you're like, you're just trying to move us now to even more of an artificial world. Like this whole metaverse thing is like,
it's weird.
It's weird and
trippy.
And
yeah,
you know, and like I see, you know, some of the things he's saying is like, well, it'd be nice because we'll be able to have like, you know, meeting rooms in the metaverse. So you'll be able to have your avatar in the metaverse so that it'll be even better than Zoom. It'll be like 3D and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, okay, that's nice. But what about the real world?
Yeah.
You know, and one of the, I mean, he talked about, he's like, that they have this foundation that he set up. So like he's using the money that he's made to help, you know, with disease research and that sort of thing. So like, okay, I get maybe the highest values in this technology, and then you can take the value you get from that to kind of help things. But there's something I just don't like about our richest people and our brightest minds dedicating their lives to creating this alternate world.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we still have this regular world here that we have to live in.
Like where's my hoverboard, man? Like there's a lot we can do in the regular world still.
And we just have like people can't afford healthcare, you know, like
or housing.
Like we have these very foundational issues in our world that I don't see how those are getting fixed when all of our attention is being directed to creating this other world. And now people are buying houses in the metaverse, which I don't even really understand.
But, but by the way, that's where the Red Dawn thing comes to, like, that's the end. Cause like if we have metaverse, it'll be so addicting, I think, that you'll have like child neglect cases and like stuff like that. But like, that's where you get barbarians at the gate. Cause like, we still have 1 billion people on this planet that don't have access to water or electricity.
Right.
Okay. So when those people do get access to electricity and water, because they are over the next 30 years, that's going to happen. And you're hanging out in the betaverse doing your thing, dude, you're going to get some barbarians at the gate that are not as weak as you. Yeah. I just see, I mean, I see the benefit of it, like, especially in home construction, where you could take someone through what the house would look like, and you can do a lot of, like, I could see that totally.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think it's just a big, personally, I think it's just a big psyop distraction to distract from what they're actually doing. Like, hey, what we're doing is essentially data mining your kids and listening to their microphone all the time and sending them ads and collecting things about them that they will never even know about them. Yeah. And then connecting people and trying to figure out, okay, who likes who and who's in, you know, and like, and playing this weird role. And yeah.
That's where I'm like, I get uncomfortable because it's like, yeah, everyone agrees there's absolutely great benefits to all of this stuff. There's absolutely ways that,
for sure,
that will connect people and will, you know, create more value. And like you said, you can walk someone through a home, you can have a meeting, we can have this call, but it'll be you and me, like actually feeling like we're sitting in front of each other, which would be really cool. But yeah, what's the end goal? Like, where is it taking us? And I mean, that's the part where I'm just like, there's some aspects of this I really, really don't like.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, if you really think about this and you're like, okay, we're at the beginning of the 2020s. I think the biggest thing that shifted for me in like right when I turned 30 was I started looking at everything in 10-year games. So I'm like, okay, these are my 30s. I got 10 years here. And then I got my 40s, 50s, 60s. I got an idea where I want to be in my 60s. I got an idea where I want to be in my 50s. I got a real good idea where I want to be at 40. You know, a real damn good idea. And so I started looking at it like that. Well, if you look at like, okay, where's this social media stuff go 10 years from now? Or just, I mean, really the 1930s or the 2030s, because like some of this technology is still gonna, like, it's gonna take a minute to really gear it up, but they're gonna have this dialed in by like mid 2030s. And so that's really where the real problem arises, is like when you get to the 2030s. And to me, like, I see this Davos crowd and what they're pushing, and I have a weird, like, I take a lot of what they say at face value, because when I was in college, we were run a PSYOP through and sponsored by the World Economic Forum. And then I had another class that same day that we were run another PSYOP by the Koch Foundation, which is where you and I, like, you know, you and I met, or we both worked over there. But they would essentially sponsor books, and it was a voluntary class. Well, the World Economic Forum class was a mandatory graduation class. You had to take colloquium at FGCU, Florida Gulf Coast University, to graduate, and you still do, to graduate. And when you were there, you were taught and you were tested on Agenda 21. And I laughed at it, like the carbon credits and all that. And I thought through it as a business major, like, how is this going to work? Okay, I see the externalities. But when you went down that document, it's like 43 pages. When you went through that document, you're like, yo, this is some like evil, dark shit. Yeah. And then when we got to 21, I reread it last year, and I was like, yo, they did this shit. Like, this is like, they pulled this off. And then you read Agenda 2030, and I'm saying, even if half of that crap gets, if they can pull off half of that crap, you're talking about a world where, like, you can forget freedom for your grandkids. Yeah. Like your kids are going to be popped out. Like, they're going to be waxed, vaxxed, and chipped from the moment they drop.
Well, and some of this stuff is like, it's not even, they say it out loud. I mean, the World Economic Forum, you know, put out that thing a couple years ago saying you'll own nothing and you'll like it.
And you'll be happy.
Yeah.
It's so bold. It's so bold. And I get where they're going. Like, look at this. Like, do you really own your phone? You got to pay $100 a month for it. Do you really own it?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, most people don't. They lease it.
Right.
But it's like, okay, you got that. You've got like your subscription. Like, I've got all my subscriptions to all my stuff. And it's only been recent where I'm like, where I'm really trying to figure out, like, is there a way that I can not pay $10 a month to have my photos on Apple where they're scanning through all of it using facial recognition and stuff? Like, I like it. It's cool. But like, can I just do this on like a Linux server and like be out of the system? And like, the answer is yes. But the answer is like, well, you have to consciously go through the friction to do that.
It's very hard to do it, right?
It's very hard to do it. But the benefit of doing it is like other people are tied into the system where like they can't get out. I'm not saying you can't get out of it, but like you can't get your photos out of it. Right. You know, I mean, you could download it, but like, what are you going to do? You're ultimately, you learn the skills, right, or you take the easy solutions, and the easy solutions are, yeah, they are scanning through your kids' photos and like taking GPS points, and like, that's what they're doing.
Well, you see it when they like remove episodes of TV shows because, you know, there was something offensive. Someone wore blackface or something. They'll just remove the episode, and without saying anything, it's just gone. And and that's, I mean, it's a silly example. Like, okay, big deal. An episode of Community got taken off, but you're like, yeah, but doesn't that kind of tells you what they're capable of when it comes to bigger stuff? You see it in Canada when they're shutting down people's bank accounts. You know,
dude, that's weird because the World Economic Forum came out immediately. I don't know if you're watching this stuff.
I don't know. I don't think I saw that.
Dude, they were claiming Trudeau as one of their best and brightest young leaders. And I was like, okay. But I mean, look, I talk about FedCoin a lot. I bring it up on this channel often because I genuinely think you guys need to have a freaking plan. Whether this goes global, this goes civil, or this just goes as an all-out assault against the people versus like the enslaving governments of the world or central bankers or whatever. I think that you need to consciously think like, okay, I like your attitude, Eric, like where you're positive about everything. You're like, what can I do? And that's what I'm going to do. And that's, I think, the best way to approach it. You do what you can do. And then beyond that, you don't worry about it. You just play it as it comes, and you look at opportunities, and you capitalize on the opportunities, and you learn as you go. But I just genuinely think like you just saw Canada, like a country where like the firm I sell metal through has a freaking vault up there at the Royal Canadian Mint. Like, we have a freaking vault there. And it was like, oh, all of a sudden, like, Canada is just going to shut down protesters who were peacefully protesting, who hadn't been accused or of doing anything illegal. Like, it wasn't like they were convicted of like, hey, so you did something illegal and here are the consequences. It wasn't even illegal at the time that they were doing it. Like, there was nothing that they were doing that was illegal. And they just showed their hand of like, yeah, let's see what happens when we close their bank accounts. Right. And the issue there is like, I genuinely think it's a test bed to be like, how well did it perform? And from what I can tell, okay, yeah, Bitcoin, you saw some onboarding. Silver sales, I can tell you, were fire in Canada last week, particularly silver because it's for spending, gold is for saving. So people, there's this movement, but also it's you waited till the last day. Like, you see this in Ukraine right now. Like, people didn't go to the grocery store till 2 days into an invasion. They were telling you for 2 months that this was going to happen. You didn't think to like prepare, like, at any level. Like, they're, you know what I mean? Like, people
that's our psychology. It's
like, people just do this, you know? And it's like, and so this whole concept of FedCoin and a social credit score and a digital passport is absolutely going to happen at some point in our lifetime. But in my opinion, that's the hill to die on. Like, that's just how I look at it. Like, and maybe there's a peaceful way to, like, you know, you're exiting the system. And then when the social credit score comes out, you're like, yeah, I don't really use debt, so I don't really care. And they're like, no, like, this gives you like better ticket deals. This gives you better like deals on your groceries and stuff. And you're like, yeah, I think that there's like this meta modern like parallel society that's going to form, or already is forming, with like-minded people that want to interact with them, and like your kids around their kids. I think that that's already happening. But then at the same time, there is this like group of the plebs, like the true sheep, like the people that are riding around in a car with a mask on by themselves.
Right.
These people exist amongst us, and like, they are going to congregate. I mean, thankfully, I mean, this is sad, but thankfully we have isolated them, and they are isolated in a car by themselves wearing a mask. Right. And they find each other on Twitter or wherever. But like,
right, fine. You guys want to go isolate?
Yeah.
Go isolate.
But this psychology, I mean, when they did, like, when we have inflation out of control, we got energy issues, but that's all by design. I don't think any of this is by mistake. You've got this like Russia man bad, even though he's asking for the exact same deal we got out of Cuba. That's all he's asking for. He's just asking for a demilitarized zone. Like, he doesn't want to manage his country. He's got no interest in this. But like, immediately you see this bandwagon of like, we're with Ukraine, and it's like, do you guys even know how to spell Ukraine? Can you find it on a map?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you guys have been like hating on each other. Like, the right and the left have been hating on each other for 2 years now. And then immediately the left is like, well, we got to go to war. And it's like, you want me and my AK? You want me to help you? No. I'm going to stay right here and farm my chickens, dude. Right. Okay. You have fun with your war. I'm not going to mess with any Russians.
Yeah, it's right. And
you know what I mean? Like,
but again, it's the confidence of like, this is what we need to be doing right now.
This is what we need to do.
The world. Right. And
it's like,
let me raise my chickens. I'm with you. It's like, I'll defend my land and my territory, but I don't know enough. There's no way to know enough about what's going on for me to be that confident in saying this is what our entire country needs to be doing right now.
It's just amazing that they can move the plebs like that quick. You know what I mean? And
people,
they can like,
people want to have something to believe in. They want to have something, a cause they can get behind and feel good about. And I think it's a psychology thing. It's just, it feels good to be supporting the cause of good versus evil.
But like, look at the evil. The evil is like at the State of the Union. Like, I literally watched this thing and I'm like, that's the evil. That's the enemy. Like, the enemy's within the gates.
Well, and to me, they're not wrong. It's like, yeah, there are innocent people being killed in Ukraine by a dictator. I don't disagree with that fact whatsoever. The question is, how much of our resources do we put into that when, again, we have a nice handful of problems here right now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, Biden comes out in his speech and he hasn't used this word in a long time. And he comes out and it's like, Russia, man, bad, unity. And like, the science has changed and like, they're all backslapping and shaking hands and no masks and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, we went from like, we were there a month ago, we were talking about a fourth experimental and we were talking about like all sorts of different things. We're talking about some kids can go back to school. I'm like, really? I'm in Florida. We never really stopped. Like, we had 2 weeks, but like, we just, and immediately it's just like, oh yeah, we're over that. Well, what happened? The trucker protest happened and they shut down a freaking capital of a major country and they had no plan. Like, they were like, how do we get these damn trucks out of our freaking bureaucratic city so that we can go to the bars and nightclubs and do like, typical political, internship, the shit you and I did, like up in DC, like that shit, like those cities are fun, like those, I had a blast up in DC, but like, ultimately those people don't want to be bothered with the working class. We want to go to our DC jobs and go to our bars and nightclubs at meet people and then do it again and then go hiking on the weekends. That's what you want to do. And like, and they had no plan to get these people out. So immediately they're like, well, these truckers are like terrorists. And obviously they're Russian sympathizers. And like, they like, well, I mean, they said that after they create the Russia thing. But the Russia thing is like a pure, like, the US will not get out of the arena. Like, I mean, the entire Trump impeachment was because of like a Hunter Biden like Ukraine deal. Like, something shady is going down in Ukraine and like Hunter Biden's involved and Trump is pressing someone on a phone call and like immediately we've got to print, orange man bad, impeach. And it's like, okay, but the second that you have like, you go from one crisis to a larger crisis, everyone forgets. Right. Like, no. Do you remember when like you told me if I had 100 employees or more that all of them were going to have to take whatever the hell you wanted me to give them or they're fired? Yeah, that's called slavery. That's also called fuck you. And it's called like Amendment 2. And it's called like, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want. And I don't like, we're not going to be aggressive at all. But like, if you come and fuck with us, like that's not going to work for you. Like, that's what it means to be an American to me, where it's just like, no, like we have a federal level for like literally one thing. And that's protection against other people with their federal levels. Other than that, they have no role. But yet, like, they had overreached it and then immediately taken it and been like, well, we've seen the rise of authoritarianism and tyrants around the world. And as Americans, we need to unify against bad man from Russia. And it's like, nope, bad man from US right here. Like, maybe I'm seeing it wrong, but like, that's
that's what I've been saying this whole time. Like, let's fix our problems here first. I'm not saying there aren't bad men other places. I'm not saying there's not huge evils going on. I'm saying we've got enough evil and bad men here that let's fix our cities. Let's keep our country from collapsing first.
Dude, I think we need the collapse. As much as that sucks, I think that's the only way through it. Only way there is through.
Like, I think it can get so ugly that I don't even want to think like that, because it's just like that means a lot of people dying. That means a lot of horrific things happening. That it's like I don't even want to think like my thing is just like I hope people can prepare themselves as much as they can for if something like that happens. But
I mean, a little 1930s, maybe not a full out collapse. Like maybe we don't lose the ability to precision machining.
Yeah.
Because if we lose precision machining, you like we're going back to 1800s.
Yeah.
Like you have a different experience because your dad's like a medical doctor that flies on helicopters and like flies in war zones, a badass. So it's like it's different. Your dad's like, hey Eric, this is what a society looks like when it collapses.
Right. That's I have enough friends who who have been to these wars. And again, it's like I live through my people I know who actually have real experience that tell me about it. I've heard enough about what it looks like when a society collapses. That's like, there's not much, again, I don't think there's much I can do as an individual to prevent that. What I can do as an individual is try to make it as soft a landing as possible if that does happen for the people closest to me, and make myself as useful as possible. And that means self-defense training. That means, again, knowing how to hunt, knowing how to raise food, knowing how to grow crops, knowing whatever it is. And again, I don't know these things. It's stuff that I'm working on now to try to learn and to do what I can in my small world and with what time I have. But the more I think people can do that, again, people shouldn't take my advice. I'm not an expert on literally anything. This is just the way I think about it. Is I think the more that people can make themselves useful with these basic skills, the softer that landing is, if that collapse comes. But I'm certainly not hoping for it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe collapse is a rough word. I think we need.
No, I mean, I get where you're coming from. I get that it's like for people to really change their ways, it takes a big shock in your personal life and in anything. I mean, and so I see what you're saying. It's like, there needs to be a big change in just the way people think about society. And I don't know. I have to hope that we can make those moves slowly in the right direction. I just have to hope for that and prepare for the worst.
Yeah. I mean, I just look at this like through economics, because I was like my early training, and it's like this game is just not going to continue. Like it just doesn't continue. Like it's not even in the demographics. Like for example, like the real estate stuff, like real estate's at all-time highs right now. I got it. Cool. I'm going to go on record and say over the next 40 years, you're going to see falling real estate prices adjusted for like inflation or adjusted based on real sound money. I don't care what you look at, because the demographics suggest it. Like you had the rise of the baby boomers and their kids, and now the millennials have less kids, and the baby boomers are going to die, and those houses are going to be empty and vacant, and there's not going to be a need for housing or for additional housing unless we open up borders, but like, so where we had like a 20-year bull market in equities, 20-year bull market or 40-year bull market in equities, 40-year bull market in bonds, 40-year bull market in real estate. That's over. It's going to be a 40-year bear. I mean, it doesn't have to be a whole bear, but like, and the value will shift to other things, but like what used to work isn't going to continue work. Like I talked to my finance bros because I just couldn't go into the industry. Now I'm into it because I'm selling metal, and I'm like, that's the one moral part of finance that I am okay with. And that's what I will do. And it won't make as much cash, but like all the people I deal with have real money. And so that will be a huge book of business in the future. So that's what I'm doing. But the guys I talked to that were like on board 10 years ago were like, oh yeah. And like, I mean, one kid today told me on the phone, like, oh, well, Trav, tech is really the place to be because it's scalable. And I'm like, bro, they don't pay dividends. We're in an inflationary environment and it's over, dude. Like you need to look at like commodities and like things that like have actual tangible things and that will go up with inflation. And he's like, I see what you're saying about this inflation stuff, but I think, I think it'll chill out. Like in another year or so, I'm sure it'll just be like a thing of the past. And it's because we've lived in a 40-year disinflationary world where we could print money, export dollars, and import free crap from the rest of the world. That's over, bro. It's over. Like it's like the idea that like you're gonna be able to print up dollars and ship them to China and they're gonna ship you plastic shit. Done. Like it's over. And so like I think that's a good thing because we have to reindustrialize and things like that. And that's what killed our middle class to begin with. But like people don't see it yet. And even Rick Rule was like, yeah, man. I mean, I think we're like in the late 60s. I remember that. People didn't quite know about the inflation until like 73. He's like, so if you see it right now and you see where this goes and you can put yourself, you can get long in those positions, like that's benefiting to you. But like, I don't think people see it. And yeah.
Again, it's like anything. It's like you're not going to see it until it's in front of you. You don't want to believe it. When you're in a bull market, you want to believe that it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
And so to think otherwise, makes you have to start thinking about bad times, and people don't want to do that. And so anyone who's started investing the last 10 years only knows bull markets. It's been so easy. It's been so easy to invest. So it's like, you talk to, any friends, especially like the younger guys, like they're like, oh, my portfolio's up this percent. And they think they're geniuses. And it's like, no, it's just, that's how the market's been for everyone. And now we're starting to see some dips and people are freaking out.
Well, I mean, that's the case is like, all right, the baby boomers are going to withdraw from their retirement funds. There's more baby boomers sucking off their retirement funds than there are millennials buying the crap they're selling. If you sell an index fund, somebody's got to be buying it. Well, if there's more sellers than buyers, it's called a bear market.
Right.
The only question is, does it crash?
Right.
Or does it just go like this as the baby boomers age?
And again, that's where I just have to be like, yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't know what's going to look like.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted I couldn't have predicted anything that's happened in the last 10 years. So it's like, I'm not going to pretend to predict in the future.
I love your humility, bro.
I
love it.
It's been a learned humility, and I think a lot of people who know me would laugh to say that I'm humble, but especially when it comes to this big picture stuff, I'm like, I don't know. I know every single person I know on every single topic has been wrong. So it's like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm smarter than anyone else.
Yeah.
On anything. So it's hope for the best. I go back to like old trite adages. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That, those kind of phrases been around for thousands of years for a reason, because some stuff is just true.
Yeah, it is true.
I think that's all you can do. So I don't know. We can talk about Bitcoin and bull markets and bear markets and commodities and stocks and all that. I don't give anyone advice ever on any of that stuff, because I don't know anything.
I love you, Eric.
I'm a bad interview, because I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, dude, it's perfect compliment, because I come out and I've got this idea on like how I see things going here. And then at the same time, I'm like re-questioning all my assumptions, but I'm like, yeah. When I'm a math dude, and when I do the math, dude, this is gnarly.
Right. They don't look like they're pointing in the right direction.
Bro, we barely take in tax receipts to run the government size we have. I mean, bro, you're talking about cutting government staff by 80% sometime in the next 10 years. That's a fact.
That's a fact. When you see just how much money we've put out in the last couple of years, and you're like, I'm surprised inflation's as low as it is.
Yeah. Or when people talk about the debt, they're like, oh, it's like 30 trillion. Like, no. The net present value of the debt is 155 trillion. Do the math right. Because you have to take into the off balance sheet liabilities. It's insane.
You're talking made up numbers at this point. It's like those numbers are so big, like you can't even wrap your head around it.
No, you just have to hit system reset, man. Right. It's like a video game. You just gotta be like, yeah, okay, we're over.
Right. I'll start from level 1, man. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, dude, the conversation's been great, man. I appreciate having you on.
Hey, I love talking to you, man. This is always fun.
This has been good. It's a good overview. I like the positive stuff. You gave me like a lot to think on.
Good. And I try, it's very easy when you're talking about this stuff to slip into negativity and pessimism, but I always try to see the bright side of it. And to me, the bright side is always like, all right, I'm in control of my life. I can affect my family and my community. And so let me think about what I can do positively. And because when you start thinking too big picture, it gets overwhelming, and you start thinking like there's nothing I can do, and that's when the negativity comes in. But when you think small picture, like, okay, I can eat better, I can get in shape, like little things like that, where it's just like, let me improve myself just a little bit, and whatever else is going on in the world, I can at least go to the gym today and do some push-ups, and maybe that's my little bit of positivity I can put into the world for today. And
yeah, no, dude, you know what? That's so key. Like you're 100% right. Like I've got to I actually have a room to clean, and I've got push-ups to do.
Right,
and no, I mean, you're 100% right. I just love the macro stuff. It's fascinating.
I know. I do. I love talking about it. I love bullshitting about it. But again, end of the day, it's like I don't know. I don't know anything. So I'll sit here and have fun with you and talk about it.
Yeah.
But I just, I try not to like let it fester, and outside of like just having fun talking about it in just kind of the big picture way, I try to like, all right, most of my day I try to think about what can I do on a small scale, and it's hard to do, but that's what I'm trying to do more of. Yeah.
I like it, man. Like that's I mean, that gives me a lot to think on, because you're 100% right on that. It's like, what can you do on the personal scale I mean, that's why I encourage people to build food forests all the time on this channel. I'm like, always like, yo, just plant something. If you're in a spot where you know you're going to be, and I know you're in the process of moving, you're going to figure out, you know what, but like, if you're in a spot where you're like, yo, I'm going to be here for a minute. Like,
how can I plug into this? Even just go volunteer, go, I work with the Special Olympics. I love working with the Special Olympics. So it's always just a fun time to go and help these guys, learn how to play basketball. And it's just like, do that. And you get plugged into the community of good people who are also trying to help people. Just plug in and meet people, connect with other like-minded people who are trying to just put good out into the world.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's really good advice. Yeah. Eric, it's been a pleasure.
Hey, man. I love it.
All right, guys. I'm going to pin Eric's channel at the top comment. Go ahead and go over there and check it out. And we'll do some more of these. I'm sure things are going to be progressing relatively.
We'll always have something to talk about. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Oh, dude, things are going to be progressing quickly from here. Yeah.
We'll see, brother, man.
All right, bro. Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Bye.